I always hope that with every story that I tell, the person who's watching it understands something about themselves better, or something about human life better. And of course it hugely depends on which stories you're telling, but I think that the very best films connect the person watching to something universal and a deeper understanding of who they are and what it means to be human. As human beings, we're hardwired to understand and make sense of the world through the power of story. So it's that, neuroscientists have looked and studied this at length. Stories since the beginning of time have been the way that we've connected to other people, connected to our universal humanity, and understood what it means to be human. There's a strategic element to knowing how we can manage our lives through hearing the stories of others. What would we do if we got hit by a bus, or a tornado came, or a knight came to steal the princess from the castle? It's as well as an entertaining tool, it's been a navigational tool, being human. And what the gateway into that can be hugely varied. It can be everything from the story of a 50-year marriage that tells us something about love, to the details of someone's morning routine. But when it connects the audience back to something universal, that's when you really know you've got something special on your hands, and that's part of the craft. One of the things I love most about having the opportunity to interview people and tell human stories is that you could take any person off the street and sit them on this chair, and they'd have a story that would absolutely make your heart bleed if you give them the space and the opportunity to tell it. It's a very unusual situation to find yourself in, or to be invited into, to sit in front of a camera and to sort of reveal yourself. From my point of view, it needs to feel really authentic and true. So part of the work as a director, when you're telling real people's stories, is really developing trust between you and your subject. And there can't be an ounce of cynicism to that trust. It has to be absolute. So as a director, if you come from a place of curiosity and really wanting to support your subject, the subject will over time be able to tell their true story, and not a sort of performative version which is slightly protecting what they really want to say. You're able to unpeel those layers. There's an aspect to being a subject who's had something very difficult happen to them, where being invited into a space to tell your story can be hugely therapeutic. And the act of telling the story in itself can be very healing for some people. But as a filmmaker, the responsibility that goes with that is huge. And that doesn't just apply to difficult stories. I think it applies, you could be talking about the weather, and I think if the relationship between interviewee and interviewer there's a sense that the interviewer is trying to get something very particular out of the interviewee, it doesn't work. With every film you make, regardless of its audience, you need the people receiving that film and viewing it to feel something very particular. If you're able to tap into using age-old storytelling techniques that have been, hardwired into our brains as human beings to respond to, then you will elicit an emotional response in your viewer. And I think that, whether your discipline is documentary or working with interactive media or writing, good old-fashioned writing, at the heart of every story and every piece of content that needs to be created, you have to elicit a feeling from the person consuming it. And that's where the craft comes in.